Hey guys, in today's video, we're checking out a device that allows you to get 16 XLR outputs over one Ethernet Cat5 cable. And in this video, I'm specifically going to go over how I use this for my in-ear monitor rack splitter. Checking out this guy right here. This is the Midas DN48160. This is a very powerful device that can be used for, just like a stage box to have 16 XLR outputs for your digital mixer somewhere. However, specifically, I'm going to be using this as my in-ear monitor rack splitter. If you aren't familiar with a splitter, it's what you use to send a separate signal to front of house than what you do to your in-ear monitors. With a traditional splitter, there's the splitter and then there's two sides that split off. Everyone plugs all their instruments into the splitter. One side goes to your in-ear monitor rack to be mixed, and the other side goes to front of house to be mixed for front of house, because those are going to be slightly different mixes, obviously. I do have a video on it if you are interested in learning more about it. And I do recommend you watch that video if you're unfamiliar with splitting for in-ear monitors. So I've used this at a couple of my gigs recently. I used this with the Behringer XR18, as well as my Behringer X32Rack. Obviously, this is going to work with Midas products as well, since it's specifically a Midas thing, as well as some other digital mixers. Those are just the two that I used this with. And it was one of the easiest ways to split the signal to front of house. And I'm going to go over it to see if this is something that can work for you in your setup. I want to thank the 2 subscribers that I had who left a comment on my video recommending this product to me on my splitter video. I was not aware of this product until you guys brought it to my attention. So massive thanks to both of you for bringing this to my attention. And then secondly, I want to thank Sweetwater for sending this product over for me to check out for the channel. All the opinions in this video are my own. And like I said, I'm using this now as my in-ear monitor splitter. So I figured I could share it with you guys to see if this is something that will work as well for you as it has for me. So don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more music tech reviews and tutorials like this in the future. And let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so here's the device right here. So just a few things with the initial setup. So on this side, you have the 16 XLR outputs, and that's what's going to be routed to front of house. But here on the back, you have a couple of things. So this can be bus powered with some devices, so you don't actually need power. However, with my Behringer XR18, I do need power, so you plug in power here. This USB port is used just for updating the firmware. You have an input and an output for Ethernet. You do have a way to connect another one, so if you do need more than 16 channels, say you need 32 outputs, you can do a master and slave one. And then you get some other settings over here, and I'll show you how to configure this for the splitter setup. So like I said, I'm going to plug in the power, and you can see the blue lights on over here on the side. And then I'm going to take an Ethernet cable, but you're going to plug that into the input because I'm going out of the mixer into the Midas 4816. As far as the 2 switches over here, make sure this one is set to alternate and make sure that this one is set to individual. And then on my mixer, where it says alternate, I'm going to come out of that. This other one over here on the left, the one that says remote Ethernet, that is used for connecting an external router. That's not what you want. You want the one that goes out of alternate personal monitoring. And that is basically it on the connections. One Ethernet Cat5 cable is going to send 16 different channels out to this Midas 4816. Of course, you are going to want to plug in the XLRs that you're going to send to front of house. Just a piece of advice, it's incredibly helpful to have everything labeled, not just numbered. So you can see, drum vocals, Scott vocals, kick, and stuff like that. I put the numbers and the name of what instrument is being sent. That is very helpful for getting front of house set up. I will also link down below to an 8-channel XLR snake, as well as a 16-channel XLR snake that you can pick up as well. So check the description down below if you need one of those. Okay, so now for configuring the mixer. So I'm going to do this in the app. I'm going to do this in Mixing Station. I highly recommend you guys check out Mixing Station. I have a video going over it. It is the best app I've used for controlling digital mixers. I will show you how to do this on the XAir as well as with the Behringer X32 as well at the end, just really quick. But I highly recommend you guys check out Mixing Station. It's the best app that I've used. But here you're going to go up to the upper right and you see this up and down arrow. You're going to click that and then you're going to go to output routing. Now, whichever mixer that you're doing, there's going to be something for, alternate out or P16 out. It's something that's labeled as far as the Ethernet output. So in my case, that is labeled as alternate up here on the right. So I'm going to click that and you can see in this column here on the left, those are going to be the XLR outputs from the DN4816. So you're going to configure them. So output 1, I want to be the signal source, which is channel 1 of my mixer, which in this case is Tony Vocals. This is my actual band's setup right here. So this is pretty simple. the output to the Midas, where do you want it to come from? Output 1 is going to come from input 1 on the mixer, or at least channel 1, which in this case is Tony vocals. Output 2 to the Midas, I want it to come from channel 2, which is my vocals, and so on and so forth. Most of the time you want these just to be exactly how you go into the mixer, but if you do want to route it slightly separately, like whatever's plugged into input 16, you can route out to output 12 or something on the Midas. You can do that in here. Most of the time you just want it to be one for one. It's a little bit easier to do and to not get mixed up that way. So the really important thing over here on the right is the signal tap. For this splitting situation right here, you're going to want to either set it to these first 4. Analog, analog plus mute, input, or input plus mute. Analog is if you have a physical input going into the mixer, whatever is plugged in. So in this case, I'm configuring the second input, which is my vocal channel. I physically plug in my vocals into channel 2 on my Behringer mixer. So I want to output that analog signal plus the mute. So if I set this just to analog, me pressing mute on my mixer won't mute front of house. I personally want that, and I'll explain why here in a minute. So anytime you see these plus M, that just means if you mute the channel on your end, it will mute the signal to front of house that you're sending to front of house. But you want this set to analog or input. You do have other controls down here, so you can say pre-EQ or post-EQ or pre-fader and stuff like that. If you want to send an output, with the EQ adjustments or with the compression and with the reverb and stuff like that, that's where you would enable these things, and that's useful in other situations. However, in a split, you mostly just want to send the signal dry because the EQ that you're going to do in your ears is going to be different than front of house. So you want this set to the first 4. Now, something to keep in mind that's very important, it still will output the gain. So wherever you have your gain set to, it will output that to front of house. It's very important to remember because once your gain is set and then you've done a sound check, you do not want to change the gain because that will change the gain in front of house and that will cause problems. So just make sure you don't adjust your gain. I wish there was a setting in here that you could just route this out pre-gain, but as of right now, you can't. But you either want to set to analog or input. So you might be asking, well, what is input versus analog? Analog means it's physically plugged into the input of the mixer. Input is if you do something like me, where I route our backing tracks into the USB in on the mixer. So I don't have a physical XLR going into, say, input 13, which is our tracks channel. That goes in via USB into our mixer, and then I've routed that to input 13 over USB. It's not an analog signal that is plugged in. It is the input, how it is routed. Does that make sense? A little bit confusing if you're not familiar with doing that, but if you've routed something, via USB or something like that, or any other method that's not just analog plugging in to the mixer in input 13 in this case, because there's nothing plugged into input 13, it is routed to channel 13 over USB. A little bit confusing, but if you're not getting analog to work, you might want to try setting that to input. And again, I have it set to input plus mute. That's the difference between analog and input. Now, there is something interesting that I like to do personally, is see the click and the cues and the talkback mic. Those are 3 things that go just to our ears, but they do not go to front of house. So I actually have those set to post fader. Now, in most situations, I just make sure that I'm not sending those signals to front of house. I literally won't plug in outputs 11 and 12 and 15. I just won't plug in those cables. However, if just by accident, some reason those are being routed to front of house, I have them set to post fader because on our main output right here, you can see click, cues, and talkback are all the way down. So if by accident something gets routed to front of house, I don't want the click or the cues or the talkback to be going to front of house by accident. Now, the talkback is actually really interesting. The way that it works is that our singer's mic will flip to the talkback mic via MIDI. If you want to see how I set that up, check out my video about setting up a talkback mic. That's specifically why I need analog plus mute in that case, so that I can mute the signal to front of house. Really quick, if you're not using Mixing Station on the XAir app, you go up to Routing, go to P16 Outputs, and then you can route it however you need in this section. And then over here on the right is where you can set it to Analog plus Mute, Input, Pre-EQ, and stuff like that. If you are doing this with the Behringer X32, you go to the Routing, click on P16. Same idea, here's the output and which signal are you trying to send. And then the tap is right here where you can say if you want it pre-EQ, post-EQ, pre-fader, and stuff like that. The Behringer X32 does send with a low cut for the first one, which is actually really interesting. Shouldn't be a problem in most situations. But again, I highly recommend you check out Mixing Station. Okay, so you might be asking, does it work with other mixers? It works with my Behringer XR18 and my Behringer X32. Obviously, it's going to work with the Midas 32 and the Midas 18 as well. With the Behringer one, so with the 18, it has that output. The 16 and the 12 do not have that output. So this is not going to work with the XR12 or the 16. That's one of the nice things about the 18. Same thing with the Midas. The Midas 12 does not have this Cat5 Ethernet out, but the 18 does. Again, as long as you can go into your configurations and you have a way to say, oh, there's a Ethernet out, or like a, it's labeled Ultranet or P16 or something like that. If you have that as an output routing, that's the most important thing. So as far as price, well, at the time of shooting, this is listed at $380. And again, purchase links to purchase this from Sweetwater will be down below in the description. Just FYI, they do have two other ones. They have the I model, which is 16 inputs. And they also do have the 4888 model, which is half and half. So 8 inputs and 8 outputs. So I just wanted to give those as an option, along with that 8 and 16 channel XLR snakes, because those are definitely very helpful to have with this type of setup. So like I said, I've been using this at my gigs recently. I did it specifically with the first gig that I did this with. I did it with my XR18, and the second gig I did the next day with my X32, and it worked great both times. Part of the reason I was so stoked about this product is that one of the reasons why I was interested in just, one cable can get to, front of house instead of having to have 16 sends, is that I've dealt with a lot of severe weather issues recently. I made a video on that, so check out those videos to see my struggles with the weather and my gear recently. But it's been awesome just to have one cable going out of my mixer to go to front of house. Obviously, you still have those 16 channels, but as far as just like, if I have to get in that situation with the weather again, it's unplug one cable and then put the covers on to my rack and stuff like that. That's a huge, huge help. So I did tell them, when I set this up, and this is something that you should do as well, as I said, hey, this is basically going to be coming out at line level, or, at unity gain, or at already gain staged, however you want to communicate that. Just make sure you tell front of house that. And I did that, and it worked out fine. The first show we played, it went into an Allen and Heath board, and the front of house engineer just said he had to put a pad on a few things in order to bring them down, but then he could adjust the gain a little bit. That's how he wanted to do it. There was no problem with that, and it worked out great. On the second gig, it went into a Midas 32 board, and I asked the engineer, how did it go? I'm trying this out, for a review for YouTube and stuff like that. He's like, dude, it was great. He said, basically, I just left the gain just basically at unity. I didn't really have to adjust anything. You did a great job with setting up your gain. And it was a much quicker setup as well. Just make sure you are communicating with your front of house engineer that these signals are going to be hot or line level or unity gain or however you want to communicate that. Just make sure you communicate that with the front of house sound engineer. And this is very important. This is the most important thing if you're going to have an in-ear monitor splitter like this. If you use this method, once you have your gain set, do not change the gain. Once it's already been set and it has been routed to front of house and you're sound checked and everything, do not adjust the gain, because again, like I mentioned, changing the gain in your mixer will change the gain to front of house. That's a way to cause a lot of problems. Hopefully that'll come with a firmware update, but as of right now, this is the way you have to do it. It shouldn't be a problem as long as you know once it's set, don't adjust the gain. Most people don't. Once everything's set for the show, it's just change your faders for your in-ear monitor mix. Just make sure that you or your bandmates do not adjust the gain in the middle of the show. That's very important. Again, it shouldn't happen, but I want to make sure that you know that. So that's basically it. I hope this video helped you guys out. If it did, do me a favor and just hit the thumbs up button. It does a lot to help out my channel, and I would appreciate it. Again, many thanks to Sweetwater for sending this over for me to check out, and purchase links to purchase all of this from Sweetwater will be down below in the description. Again, many thanks to Eric and Dan for leaving those comments in my prior video that recommended this product to me. I really appreciate it. And so be sure to leave some comments down below if you guys have any other cool gear that you want me to check out and possibly review for the channel. But yeah, thank you, Eric and Dan, for recommending this to me and making my life easier. So check out my video on my portable in-ear monitor rack setup, as well as a video I have on 10 different items that are helpful for your in-ear monitor rack setup. Although to be fair, some of that is going to be updated since this video because I am now using this as my splitter. But there's still a lot of good details in those videos, so check those out. You can check out both of those videos by clicking the links on your screen now. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Scott Yule Music. Post a lot of my gig stuff there, especially in my stories. Thank you guys again for watching. Leave a comment down below if there's any other cool gear you want me to check out. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.